The vast, inky blackness of space stretched out before them, dotted with distant pinpricks of light that offered little comfort to the weary Xendari refugees. Their once proud civilization lay in ruins, their advanced technology stripped away by the ruthless Relians in a brutal campaign of conquest. Asha, one of the Xendari elders, gazed grimly out the viewport of their battered transport ship. She remembered the fateful day when the Zrelian armada had descended upon their homeworld, overwhelming their defenses with weapons and tactics that Xendari had never encountered. Within a matter of weeks, their cities lay in smoldering ruin, their once gleaming spires reduced to twisted metal and ash. "We have no choice but to flee," Asha had told the remaining council members as they frantically charted a course through the stars. "Our people cannot withstand another assault. We must find a safe haven, somewhere the Zrelians cannot reach us." And so they had fled, a ragtag fleet of ancient craft carrying the last remnants of the Xendari race. For weeks, they had drifted aimlessly through the void, their supplies dwindling, their spirits sinking with each passing day. Many had succumbed to despair, their bodies cast adrift among the stars. But now, as Asha peered out at the distant stars, a flicker of hope kindled within her. Their sensors had detected the faint emissions of a planetary system, and the readings indicated the presence of a thriving human colony. Asha knew little about these humans, save for the fragments of information that Xendari had gathered over the centuries. But in their current plight, they had no other choice but to seek sanctuary among them. "Prepare a message," Asha commanded, her voice carrying a newfound resolve. "We will approach the human settlement and make our plea for asylum. They are our only hope now." As the transport ships altered course, Asha felt a pang of trepidation. Would the humans even understand the gravity of their situation? Would they see the Xendari as a threat, or would they offer the refuge the refugees so desperately needed? The journey to the human colony was harrowing, with the aging ships straining under the stress of sustained warp travel. Asha and the other elders took turns monitoring the systems, their hands trembling as they watched for any sign of pursuit from the Zrelians. The thought of their ancient enemy catching up to them filled them with a visceral terror, a fear of annihilation that haunted their every waking moment. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, the colony's bright lights came into view, a beacon of hope amidst the endless void. Asha felt a surge of relief, quickly tempered by anxiety. How would the humans react to their presence? Would they understand the dire circumstances that had brought the Xendari to their doorstep? As the transport ships approached the colony's perimeter, Asha composed a message, her fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease. Though the Xendari language was vastly different from that of the humans, she had spent countless hours studying their communication protocols, determined to make their plea for assistance as clear and compelling as possible. "Greetings, people of the human colony," the message began, Asha's voice calm and measured. "I am Asha, an elder of the Xendari race. We come to you in a state of great distress, our civilization decimated by the relentless onslaught of the Zrelian invaders. Our technology, once the envy of the stars, has been stripped from us, leaving us vulnerable and powerless against our enemies." Asha paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "We beg of you, offer us sanctuary within your walls. Our people have nowhere else to turn, and the Zrelians will not rest until they have hunted us down to the last. If you have the means to protect us, we will be forever in your debt. We have knowledge and resources that could be of great value to your colony, but above all, we seek the safety that you alone can provide." As the message was transmitted, Asha could feel the weight of her people's fate resting squarely on her shoulders. If the humans rejected their plea, the Xendari would have no choice but to continue their endless, hopeless drift through the stars until the Zrelians caught up with them and brought about their final, inevitable end. Asha turned to the other elders, her eyes meeting theirs with a silent plea. "We must have faith," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The humans are our only hope now. If they turn us away, our people are doomed." The minutes ticked by in agonizing silence, The Tsenderi refugees huddled together in the cramped confines of the transport ships, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Asha stared out the viewport, her gaze fixed on the distant colony, silently willing the humans to hear their desperate call for help. And then, at last, a response flickered to life on the communications console, the words causing Asha's breath to catch in her throat. "This is Dr. Sarah Jones, Chief Science Officer of the Calypso Colony. We have received your message and are prepared to offer you asylum. Please, guide your ships to the designated docking coordinates. We will do all in our power to protect you from your pursuers." Dr. Sarah Jones gazed out the viewport of the Calypso Colony's command center, her brow furrowed in deep contemplation. The main screen displayed the approaching Tsenderi vessels, their battered hulls a stark contrast to the gleaming, state-of-the-art infrastructure of the human settlement. "This is highly unusual," Sarah murmured, more to herself than to the other officers gathered around her. "An alien race in clear distress, seeking our aid. What could have driven them to our doorstep in such a desperate state?" Sarah had spent years studying the various alien civilizations that had made contact with the Calypso colony, but the Tsenderi were a relative enigma. Their technology, once renowned throughout the galaxy, was now seemingly reduced to a mere shadow of its former glory. And yet, the urgency of their plea for help had been palpable, tinged with a sense of raw terror that Sarah found deeply unsettling. "Captain, we've received the Tsenderi's message," one of the communications officers reported. "They claim to be refugees, fleeing from a relentless enemy known as the Zrelians. They're asking for asylum and protection." Sarah nodded, her mind racing. "Patch the message through to the colony's leadership. We need to convene an emergency meeting to discuss this matter immediately." As the other officers hurried to carry out her orders, Sarah took a moment to collect her thoughts. The decision to offer sanctuary to these alien refugees would have far-reaching consequences, both for the colony and its people. On one hand, their advanced knowledge and resources could prove invaluable, a potential boon to the colony's continued growth and prosperity. But the risk of harboring a potential threat, especially one fleeing from such a formidable enemy, was not one to be taken lightly. Sarah recalled the colony's history, the hard-won battles against hostile alien incursions, and the ever-present need to maintain a vigilant defense. The Calypso colony had been established as a beacon of human ingenuity and resilience, a shining example of what could be achieved when the disparate nations of Earth came together. But that unity and prosperity had been forged through sacrifice, and the colonists were justifiably wary of anything that might jeopardize the delicate balance they had worked so hard to achieve. As the colony's leadership assembled in the conference room, Sarah presented the Tsenderi's plea, her voice measured, and her expression neutral. She outlined the limited information they had about the Tsenderi, their once advanced civilization, and the reasons behind their desperate flight. "We must consider the implications of granting these refugees asylum," Sarah said, her gaze sweeping across the gathered officials. "If the Zrelians are indeed as formidable as the Tsenderi claim, then welcoming them into our colony could potentially draw the wrath of a powerful enemy upon us. On the other hand, turning them away could be seen as a betrayal, and we may be denying ourselves a valuable opportunity to forge an alliance with a technologically sophisticated alien race." The discussion that followed was heated and impassioned, with some members of the leadership vehemently opposed to the idea of harboring the Tsenderi, while others saw it as a chance to bolster the colony's defenses and expand their knowledge. "We cannot simply turn our backs on these people," argued Counselor Emily Fernandez, her expression hardening. "They have lost everything, and we have the power to provide them with the sanctuary they so desperately need. What kind of message would it send to the rest of the galaxy if we refuse to aid those in such dire circumstances?" "But can we be certain of their intentions?" countered Counselor Robert Nguyen, his brow furrowed in concern. "What if this is all an elaborate ruse, a ploy to infiltrate our colony and weaken our defenses from within? The risks are simply too great, and we cannot jeopardize the safety of our people." As the debate raged on, Sarah listened intently, her mind working overtime to weigh the merits of each argument. She knew that the decision they made here today would have far-reaching consequences, not just for the Exendari refugees, but for the very future of the Calypso colony itself. Finally, Sarah raised her hand, silencing the room. I believe we need more information before we can make a truly informed decision. I propose that we send a diplomatic team to meet with the Exendari elders to better understand their situation and their technology. Only then can we determine whether granting them asylum is the wisest course of action. The other officials exchanged glances, the tension in the room palpable. After a moment of contemplation, the colony's governor, Samantha Hendricks, nodded in agreement. Dr. Jones makes a valid point. We cannot afford to act rashly in this matter. Assemble a team, Sarah, and make contact with the Exendari vessels. Learn what you can, and report back to us with your findings. The fate of our colony may very well rest on your shoulders. As Sarah left the conference room, she couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility settling upon her. The Exendari's future, and perhaps the future of the Calypso colony itself, now rested in her hands. The Exendari transport ships descended slowly onto the Calypso colony's main landing pad, their once sleek hulls now pockmarked and scarred from the rigors of their desperate flight. As the massive bay doors rumbled open, a contingent of armed security personnel stood at the ready, their weapons drawn but their expressions wary rather than hostile. Dr. Sarah Jones approached the airlock, flanked by a small team of her most trusted aides. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the first direct encounter with the alien refugees. Despite the colony's unease, Sarah was determined to approach the situation with an open mind, driven by a genuine curiosity to understand the Exendari's plight. As the airlock cycled, the doors parted to reveal a group of solemn-faced Exendari elders, their regal bearing at odds with the evident exhaustion etched into their features. At their center stood Asha, the elder who had sent the colony's desperate plea for help. "Greetings, people of the Calypso colony," Asha began, her voice carrying a weary but resolute tone. "I am Asha, and these are my people, the Exendari. We come to you as refugees, fleeing the devastation of our homeworld at the hands of our relentless enemies, the Zrelians." Sarah stepped forward, her expression one of cautious empathy. "Welcome to Calypso, Asha. I am Dr. Sarah Jones, the colony's chief science officer. We have heard your plea for assistance, and we are here to learn more about your situation and your people." Asha inclined her head slightly, her gaze studying Sarah's face intently. "We are grateful for your willingness to hear our story. As I mentioned in my message, our once advanced civilization has been stripped of its technological might, leaving us vulnerable and powerless against the Zrelians. We seek nothing more than a safe haven, where we can rebuild and reclaim our rightful place among the stars." Sarah nodded, gesturing for the Exendari elders to follow her. "If you'll come with me, we can discuss your situation in more detail. I'd like to better understand the nature of your conflict with the Zrelians, as well as the specifics of the technology that was taken from your people." As they walked through the bustling corridors of the colony, Sarah couldn't help but notice the uneasy glances that the human colonists cast toward the Exendari. It was clear that the presence of these alien refugees had stirred up a complex mix of emotions, from curiosity to outright fear. Ushering the Exendari elders into a private conference room, Sarah and her team took their seats, their attention focused intently on Asha's every word. The elder spoke of a once mighty Exendari civilization, its people living in harmony and prosperity, their advanced technology the envy of their galactic neighbors. The Zrelians were a rising power, a warlike race driven by an insatiable hunger for conquest. Asha explained, her brow furrowing with a mix of anger and sorrow. "They coveted our technology, our resources, and our knowledge. When we refused to submit to their demands, they launched a devastating assault, overwhelming our defenses with weapons we had never encountered before." Sarah listened, her mind racing as she pieced together the fragments of information. "And this technology that was taken from your people, what was its nature? How did it give you such an advantage over your enemies? Asha hesitated, her gaze darting nervously toward the other Xendari elders. The truth is, we are reluctant to share the full details of our technological capabilities, not out of distrust, but out of a deep-seated fear. You see, the Xrelians were able to strip away our most advanced systems, rendering us powerless. We cannot risk the same fate befalling you, should you choose to harbor us. Sarah felt a twinge of frustration, but she kept her expression neutral. I understand your reluctance, Asha, but in order for us to make an informed decision about granting you asylum, we need to know more. The safety of our colony and its people must be our top priority. Asha nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting the deep wells of sorrow and resignation. Very well. I will share what I can, but I must ask that you keep this information strictly confidential. The Xrelians must never learn the full extent of our technological prowess, lest they seek to claim it for themselves. As Asha began to unveil the secrets of the Xendari's advanced systems, Sarah's eyes widened with a mixture of fascination and disbelief. The sheer scale and complexity of the Xendari's engineering feats were unlike anything she had ever encountered, and she found herself grappling with the implications of this knowledge. If this is truly the extent of your people's technological capabilities, Sarah murmured, then I can see why the Xrelians would have sought to strip it from you. The power you wielded could have made you an insurmountable force. Asha nodded solemnly. And that is precisely why we dare not share the full truth, even with you. The Xrelians have been relentless in their pursuit, and they will not rest until they have eliminated the last vestige of our civilization. If they were to learn of our hidden knowledge, they would stop at nothing to claim it for themselves. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her mind whirling with the weight of this revelation. The decision to grant the Xendari asylum had just become infinitely more complex, with far-reaching consequences that could potentially reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. I will need to present this information to the colony's leadership, Sarah said, her voice heavy with the gravity of the situation. Their decision will not be an easy one, Asha, but I give you my word that we will consider your plea with the utmost care and attention. As the Xendari elders filed out of the conference room, Sarah found herself alone, the weight of responsibility and the burden of this newfound knowledge pressing heavily upon her. The fate of her people and the fate of the Xendari now rested squarely on her shoulders. The arrival of the Xendari refugees had stirred a palpable unease throughout the Calypso colony. While some of the colonists greeted the aliens with a cautious curiosity, others eyed them with suspicion and distrust, their hands instinctively drifting toward the sidearms holstered at their hips. Sarah Jones knew that bridging the divide between the humans and the Xendari would be a delicate and challenging task, but she was determined to find a way to ease the tensions. As the colony's chief science officer, she had been tasked with overseeing the integration of the refugee population, and she took the responsibility seriously. Donning a warm smile, Sarah approached a group of young colonists who were gathered near the Xendari ships, their expressions a mix of fascination and apprehension. "Ah, I see you've taken an interest in our new guests," she said, her tone inviting. "I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What do you make of the Xendari?" One of the colonists, a young woman named Amara, stepped forward, her brow furrowed in contemplation. "Well, they certainly seem different from any alien species we've encountered before. Their ships are unlike anything I've ever seen, and their manner of speaking is almost regal, in a way." Sarah nodded, her gaze drifting toward the Xendari elders as they moved about the landing pad, their movements slow and deliberate. Yes, the Xendari have a rich cultural heritage, one that has been shaped by their advanced technological prowess. But as you can imagine, the loss of that power has left them in a rather vulnerable position. Another colonist, a young man named Liam, spoke up, his voice tinged with skepticism. "So they claim. But how do we know they're telling the truth? What if this is all some kind of elaborate ruse to infiltrate our colony and weaken our defenses?" Sarah empathized with Liam's concerns, having heard similar sentiments echoed within the colony's leadership. I understand your caution, Liam. Believe me, the decision to offer the Exendary asylum is not one that has been made lightly. But from what I've gathered in my discussions with their elders, their plight is very real, and their need for our help is genuine. Amara's eyes widened, a spark of curiosity igniting within them. You've spoken with them, then. What did you learn? Sarah hesitated, mindful of the sensitive nature of the information she had obtained. The Exendary's technological capabilities were once far beyond anything we've encountered before. They possessed the ability to harness energy on a scale that we can scarcely imagine. But in their conflict with Israelians, they were stripped of this power, leaving them vulnerable, and, as they say, powerless. Liam's expression darkened, his arms crossing over his chest. So they're asking us to trust them, despite the fact that they've apparently been holding back on the full extent of their technological prowess. Forgive me, Dr. Jones, but that doesn't exactly fill me with confidence. Sarah nodded, understanding the young man's concerns. I know it's a lot to take in, Liam. But the Exendary have made it clear that they fear the Israelians would seek to claim their hidden knowledge for themselves, should they learn of it. They're not willing to risk that, even with us. Amara's gaze drifted toward the Exendary elders, a faint glimmer of empathy in her eyes. So they're trapped, in a way, forced to hide their true capabilities in order to protect themselves and us. That must be an awful burden to bear. Sarah smiled, placing a reassuring hand on Amara's shoulder. It is indeed, and that's why I believe we have a responsibility to at least try to understand them, to see them as more than just potential threats. They're a people who have lost everything, and they're reaching out to us in the hopes of finding a new home. Liam's expression softened slightly, his skepticism giving way to a hint of curiosity. I suppose you have a point. If Israelians are as formidable as the Exendary claim, then perhaps we could learn a thing or two from them, even if they're not willing to share the full extent of their knowledge. Sarah nodded, her gaze sweeping across the small group. Exactly. And that's why I'm hoping to assemble a team of colonists, young, curious minds like yourselves, to interact with the Exendary, to learn about their culture, their history, and perhaps even uncover some of the secrets they're so reluctant to reveal. Amara's eyes lit up, and Liam's posture shifted, a newfound interest etching itself into his features. Sarah knew that winning over the trust of the colony's people would be crucial in helping the Exendary integrate and, ultimately, in determining the fate of both their peoples. So, what do you say? Sarah asked, her voice warm and inviting. Are you willing to be part of this diplomatic mission? As the young colonists eagerly nodded their assent, Sarah couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps with their help, she could find a way to bridge the divide between the Exendary and the humans and uncover the truth that lay at the heart of the refugees' desperate plight. A palpable tension had settled over the Calypso colony in the days following the Exendary's arrival. While Sarah Jones and her team of young diplomats had made steady progress in bridging the divide between the humans and the refugees, the underlying unease among the colonists remained, fueled by the persistent rumors and speculation about the true nature of the Exendary's technology. Late one night, as Sarah pored over the latest reports from her diplomatic team, a frantic call came in from the colony's security center. Dr. Jones, we have an urgent situation. The officer's voice crackled over the comm. Multiple unidentified vessels have just breached our perimeter, and they appear to be Israelian in origin. They're demanding the immediate surrender of the Exendary refugees, or they'll open fire on the colony. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat, a cold chill running down her spine. The Israelians had tracked the Exendary to their new home, and the colony now found itself directly in the crosshairs of this formidable alien force. Initiate a full-scale alert and mobilize all available security personnel, she barked, already moving toward the command center. I'm on my way. As Sarah raced through the corridors, her mind raced with 1,000 different scenarios, each more dire than the last. Had the Exendary's presence doomed the Calypso colony to destruction? Had her decision to offer them sanctuary been a tragic mistake? Bursting into the command center, Sarah was met with a flurry of activity, the air thick with tension, and the hum of the colony's defensive systems powering up. "Status report," she demanded, her gaze sweeping across the room. "The Zrelian ships have taken up defensive positions around the colony," one of the officers reported, his fingers flying across the holographic displays. "They're transmitting a message, demanding the immediate surrender of the Xendari refugees. If we refuse, they've threatened to open fire and destroy the entire colony." Sarah's jaw tightened, her mind racing as she weighed the options. Surrendering the Xendari would be a betrayal of the trust she had worked so hard to build, but to refuse would invite the full wrath of the Zrelian military upon her people. "Have we established any communication with the Xendari elders?" she asked, her voice tight with urgency. "Yes, Mom. Asha is standing by, awaiting your instructions." Sarah nodded, steeling herself for the difficult conversation to come. "Patch me through." Asha's face appeared on the main view screen, the elder's features etched with a mix of fear and resignation. "Dr. Jones," Asha began, her voice trembling, "I fear our presence here has doomed your colony. The Zrelians have found us, and they will not rest until they have reclaimed what they believe is rightfully theirs." Sarah's expression hardened, her resolve strengthening. "Asha, we will not surrender you to the Zrelians. Your people have suffered enough, and I will not betray the trust you have placed in us." Asha's eyes widened, a glimmer of hope flickering to life. "Then what do you propose, Dr. Jones? The Zrelians will not relent, and they possess the firepower to reduce your colony to rubble." Sarah took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping across the faces of the officers in the command center. "We fight. We defend our home, and we protect the Xendari refugees, no matter the cost." A murmur of uncertainty rippled through the room, and Sarah raised her hand, silencing the dissent. "I know the risks, but we cannot simply hand over these people to their oppressors. The Xendari have lost everything, and we have the opportunity to stand with them, to show the galaxy that the Calypso colony will not be cowed by tyranny." Asha's expression shifted, a glimmer of hope igniting in her eyes. "Dr. Jones, you and your people are truly remarkable. I had dared not to dream that we would find such staunch allies in our darkest hour." Sarah nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Then let us show the Zrelians the true power of our alliance. Asha, I need you and your people to work with my team to prepare our defenses. We have a battle to win." As Asha relayed the plan to the other Xendari elders, Sarah turned to the officers, her voice resolute. "Inform the colony's leadership of the situation and begin mobilizing all available resources. We need to fortify our defenses and prepare for a direct assault. This is no longer just about protecting the Xendari. It's about defending our home, our way of life, and everything we've built here on Calypso." The officers sprang into action, their faces set with a determined expression. Sarah knew that the path ahead would be fraught with peril, but she refused to let fear or doubt cloud her judgment. The Zrelians had come to their doorstep, and the Calypso colony would stand firm, united with their newfound Xendari allies. As the countdown to the Zrelian assault began, Sarah found herself standing at the heart of a pivotal moment, one that would test the limits of her leadership, the strength of her colony, and the fate of two disparate civilizations thrust together by the cruel winds of circumstance. The air in the Calypso colony's command center crackled with a palpable tension as the Zrelian warships maintained their aggressive posture, their weapons systems primed and ready to unleash a devastating assault at the slightest provocation. Dr. Sarah Jones stood at the heart of the operations, her gaze fixed on the holographic displays that relayed the status of the colony's defenses. Beside her, Asha and the Xendari elders huddled, their faces etched with a mix of fear and determination. "The Zrelians have us outmatched in firepower and numbers," Sarah admitted, her voice measured but authoritative. "But we have one advantage: time. They won't risk destroying the colony outright, not when they believe they can recover their lost technology by capturing the Xendari alive." Asha nodded, her hands trembling slightly. "That is true," Dr. Jones. The Zrelians view us as little more than tools to be reclaimed, their thirst for our knowledge insatiable. They will seek to subdue us, not annihilate us. Sarah's lips tightened into a grim line. Then we must use that to our advantage. If we can hold out long enough, perhaps we can find a way to turn the tide of this battle. Turning to the assembled officers, Sarah's voice rang out with a newfound certainty. Initiate the emergency fortification protocols. Divert all non-essential power to the colony's defense systems and shields. We need to be ready when the Zrelians make their move. As the command center erupted into a flurry of activity, Sarah spared a glance at the Exendary elders, her expression softening. Asha, I need you and your people to work with my team. Show them how to harness your hidden technological capabilities. Anything that might give us an edge in this fight. Asha's eyes widened, a flicker of hesitation crossing her features. Dr. Jones, you must understand the gravity of what you're asking. The Zrelians have been relentless in their pursuit of our knowledge. If they were to discover the true extent of our abilities, they would stop at nothing to claim it for themselves. Sarah reached out, placing a reassuring hand on the elder's shoulder. I know the risks, Asha, but we have no other choice. The fate of our colony, and perhaps the fate of both our peoples, rests on our ability to hold our ground. Please, we need your help. Asha's gaze held Sarah's for a long, tense moment before she finally nodded, her expression resolute. Very well, Dr. Jones. We will do what we can to aid your efforts, but I must insist that the full scope of our knowledge remains hidden, even from your own people. Understood, Sarah replied, her voice grave. We will honor your trust, Asha. Now, let's get to work. As the Exendary elders dispersed to coordinate with the colony's technicians, Sarah turned her attention back to the escalating situation beyond the colony's walls. The Zrelian ships had begun to move, their weapons systems powering up in a clear show of force. They're preparing to attack, one of the officers reported, his voice tinged with a hint of panic. Sarah, we may not be able to withstand their full onslaught. Sarah steeled her nerves, her mind racing as she considered their options. Then we'll have to strike first. Order all defensive batteries to target the Zrelian vessels' weapon systems and engines. We need to cripple their offensive capabilities before they can unleash their full firepower. The command was relayed, and within moments, the Calypso colony's defenses roared to life, a barrage of energy beams and missile strikes lancing out toward the Zrelian armada. The alien ships, caught off guard by the ferocity of the assault, scrambled to retaliate, but their movements were hampered by the precision of the colony's attacks. It's working, one of the officers exclaimed, his eyes widening with a glimmer of hope. We're causing significant damage to their fleet. If we can keep this up, we might just have a chance. Sarah nodded, her gaze fixed on the unfolding battle. Keep the pressure on. I want every available resource focused on disabling those ships. We can't let up, not for a moment. As the Zrelian vessels struggled to regain their footing, Sarah's attention turned to the Exendary contingent, their faces tense with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Asha, is there anything more your people can do to aid our defenses? She asked, her voice tinged with a sense of urgency. The Exendary elder hesitated, her expression conflicted. There is one possibility, Dr. Jones, but the risk is immense, both for your colony and for our own people. Sarah's brow furrowed, her gaze unwavering. Whatever it is, we need to consider it. We're running out of time. Asha took a deep breath, her eyes hardening with a newfound resolve. Very well. I will instruct our technicians to attempt to reactivate our most powerful defensive systems, the ones that the Zrelians were never able to fully disable. But I must warn you, the strain on our colony's power grid could be catastrophic. Sarah nodded, her expression grim. We'll have to take that risk. Do it, Asha. Whatever it takes to give us the edge we need to win this battle. As the Exendary elders dispersed, Sarah turned her attention back to the unfolding conflict, her heart pounding in her chest. The fate of the Calypso colony, and perhaps the fate of both their peoples, now hung in the balance. The battle for the Calypso colony raged on, the air thick with the acrid scent of scorched metal and the deafening roar of weapons fire. Dr. Sarah Jones stood at the heart of the command center, her eyes fixed on the holographic displays as they relayed the ebb and flow of the desperate conflict. Despite the colony's valiant efforts, the Zrelian forces continued to press their advantage, their ships unleashing a barrage of devastating firepower that taxed the colony's defenses to their limits. Sarah's jaw tightened with a mix of determination and concern as she watched the energy readings begin to fluctuate. "Status report," she barked, her voice cutting through the din. "Our defensive systems are holding, but the strain on the power grid is reaching critical levels," one of the officers reported, his face etched with worry. "If we can't find a way to alleviate the burden soon, our shields and weapons will begin to fail." Sarah's gaze darted to the Xandari contingent, where Asha and the elders stood, their expressions tense and focused. "Asha, your people promised a way to turn the tide of this battle. Is there anything more you can do?" Asha met Sarah's gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of resolve and trepidation. "There is one final option, Dr. Jones, but the risk to both our peoples is grave. The Zrelians must never be allowed to reclaim the full extent of our technological prowess." Sarah felt a surge of urgency, her heart pounding in her chest. "Whatever it is, Asha, we need it now. Our colony can't hold out much longer." The Xandari elder nodded, turning to her fellow elders and issuing a series of rapid-fire instructions. Within moments, the Xandari technicians sprung into action, their fingers dancing across the control panels with a practiced ease. Suddenly, the entire colony was bathed in a pulsing ethereal glow as the Xandari's hidden defensive systems came to life. Energy fields flickered into existence, shimmering like translucent barriers around the colony's vital infrastructure. "What is this?" Sarah breathed, her eyes widening in awe. "The last vestiges of our civilization's technological might," Asha replied, her voice tinged with a hint of regret. "These energy fields will divert and dissipate the Zrelians' weaponry, but the strain on our systems will be immense. We can only sustain this for a limited time." As if on cue, the Zrelian ships unleashed another devastating barrage, their firepower crashing against the shimmering barriers. Sarah watched, her breath caught in her throat, as the energy fields absorbed the impacts, the underlying power grid fluctuating with each successive blow. "The colony's defenses are holding," one of the officers reported, his voice tinged with a note of disbelief. "But the power levels are dropping rapidly. We can't maintain this for much longer." Sarah turned to Asha, her expression resolute. "Then we need to make every second count. Order all available firepower to focus on the Zrelian vessels. If we can cripple their offensive capabilities before the Xandari systems fail, we may just have a chance." The command was relayed, and once more, the Calypso colony's defensive batteries unleashed a barrage of energy beams and missiles, targeting the Zrelian ships with renewed vigor. The alien vessels, caught off guard by the colony's sudden resurgence, struggled to mount an effective counterattack, their movements hampered by the shimmering energy fields. As the battle raged on, Sarah watched with bated breath, her mind racing with 1,000 different scenarios. The Xandari's gambit had bought them valuable time, but she knew that the strain on their systems could not be sustained indefinitely. "The Zrelian ships are taking significant damage," one of the officers exclaimed, his voice tinged with a hint of triumph. "Their weapon systems are offline, and their engines are crippled. They're losing maneuverability." Sarah felt a surge of hope, her expression tightening with a renewed determination. "Then this is our chance. Order all available forces to concentrate their fire on the Zrelian flagship. We need to take out their command vessel and break their will to fight." The colony's defensive batteries unleashed a devastating volley, their energy beams and missiles converging on the Zrelian flagship. The massive alien vessel shuddered under the barrage, its shields flickering and faltering, until, finally, a series of devastating explosions tore through its hull. As the Zrelian flagship spiraled out of control, the rest of the alien fleet began to retreat, their movements erratic and disorganized. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her, but her gaze quickly turned to the Xendari contingent, where Asha and the elders stood, their faces etched with a mix of triumph and exhaustion. "Asha, your people have done it," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've saved us all." The Xendari elder nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "It was a risk we had to take, Dr. Jones. The Zrelians must never again threaten our people, or yours." Sarah reached out, placing a gentle hand on Asha's shoulder. "And we will stand by your side, Asha. The Calypso colony owes you a debt of gratitude that can never be repaid." As the colony's residents emerged from the shelters, their faces alight with a newfound hope, Sarah knew that the battle had been won, but the true test lay ahead. The Xendari had entrusted the humans with their most closely guarded secret, and the responsibility to protect it would be a heavy burden to bear. But in that moment, Sarah felt a surge of determination. The Calypso colony had proven its mettle, and she knew that, together with the Xendari, they would be ready to face whatever challenges lay in store. In the aftermath of the Zrelian assault, the Calypso colony was a hive of activity, its residents working tirelessly to repair the damage and tend to the wounded. At the heart of the bustling recovery effort stood Dr. Sarah Jones, her expression a mix of pride and contemplation as she surveyed the scene. The colony's residents had risen to the occasion, their courage and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds inspiring a newfound sense of unity and purpose. But it was the Xendari refugees, once considered outsiders, who had played the pivotal role in securing the colony's survival. As Sarah approached the Xendari encampment, she was greeted by the sight of Asha and the other elders gathered in quiet discussion. The weight of their sacrifice was etched into their features, a testament to the enormous strain they had endured in reactivating their hidden defensive systems. "Asha," Sarah began, her voice soft but resolute, "your people have saved us all. The Calypso colony owes you an unpayable debt." The Xendari elder raised her gaze to meet Sarah's, a weary but sincere smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "And you, Dr. Jones, have shown us that there are those in this galaxy who are willing to stand beside us, even in our darkest hour. For that, we are eternally grateful." Sarah nodded, her expression solemn. "I know the risks you took, the burdens you've borne. The Zrelians will not soon forget the power you wielded, and they will be relentless in their pursuit of that knowledge." Asha's gaze hardened, a flash of determination glinting in her eyes. "Then we must ensure that they never again threaten our people or yours. The Xendari have lost too much already. We cannot allow the Zrelians to reclaim what was taken from us." Sarah's brow furrowed, her mind racing as she considered the implications of Asha's words. "What are you proposing, Asha?" The Xendari elder straightened, her voice carrying a newfound resolve. "We must forge a lasting alliance with the Calypso colony, one that will safeguard both our peoples against the Zrelian menace. Together, we can rebuild what was lost and ensure that our civilizations emerge stronger than ever before." Sarah felt a surge of hope, but also a twinge of trepidation. "The decision to grant you asylum was a difficult one, Asha, and the price your people paid to defend us was immense. Are you sure you're ready to take on that burden once more?" Asha's expression softened, a touch of wariness creeping in around the edges. "We have no choice, Dr. Jones. The Zrelians will never stop hunting us, and we cannot rely on the kindness of strangers forever. Here, with you and your people, we have found a glimmer of hope, a chance to reclaim our rightful place among the stars." Sarah reached out, placing a reassuring hand on Asha's shoulder. "Then you shall have it, Asha. The Calypso colony will stand beside the Xendari, no matter the cost. We will rebuild, we will grow, and we will face the Zrelians as allies, united in our determination to forge a new future." As the news of the Xendari's decision spread through the colony, a palpable sense of excitement and anticipation filled the air. The once wary colonists now looked upon their alien neighbors with a newfound respect and admiration, their initial suspicions giving way to a genuine desire to learn and collaborate. Under Sarah's guidance, the Xendari and the humans worked tirelessly to repair the damage inflicted by the Israelian assault, pooling their knowledge and resources to create a stronger, more resilient colony. The Xendari's hidden technological prowess proved invaluable, allowing the Calypso colony to upgrade its defenses and expand its reach, while the humans' innovative spirit and resourcefulness breathed new life into the Xendari's once stagnant civilization. As the weeks turned into months, the bonds between the two peoples deepened, forged in the crucible of adversity and the shared vision of a future free from the Israelian threat. Sarah marveled at the transformation, watching as the once powerless Xendari refugees blossomed into respected partners and valued members of the Calypso community. "It's remarkable, isn't it?" Asha said one day, as she and Sarah stood side by side, gazing out at the colony's bustling skyline. "To think that our people, once on the brink of extinction, now stand poised to reclaim our rightful place among the stars. And all because of your willingness to offer us a chance at a new beginning." Sarah nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "And it's all thanks to you, Asha. The courage and resilience of the Xendari have been an inspiration to us all. Together, we will build a future that the Israelians could never have imagined." Asha's expression darkened for a moment, a shadow of her people's past tragedies flitting across her features. "The path ahead will not be an easy one, Dr. Jones. The Israelians will not relent, and they will stop at nothing to reclaim what they believe is rightfully theirs." Sarah reached out, her hand closing around Asha's in a gesture of solidarity. "Then let them come, Asha. The Calypso colony and the Xendari will meet them head-on, united in our determination to forge a new era of peace and prosperity. This is our home now, and we will defend it, no matter the cost." As the two leaders gazed out at the horizon, a sense of purpose and resolve steeled their hearts. The Israelian threat still loomed, but in the face of adversity, the Calypso colony and the Xendari had forged an unbreakable bond, one that would shape the future of both their peoples and perhaps the entire galaxy.